Hola, buenos días, soy Nico.
I do not sip tea with the enemy. You can force me to go, but you cannot force me to be someone I'm not.
The hell I can't! You gonna go, and you're not gonna embarrass me in front of my new neighbors, or I'm gonna beat your ass!
And today, we're here to finish off another wonderful week's worth of content. Well, yes. But before we get started, if you like this kind of content, make sure to follow me on patreon.com/Nicosaesthetics and more exclusive videos, weekly live streams, and be a part of the live streams where we have multifaceted conversations with a varied panel. If that sounds interesting to you, definitely tune in. As for the Patreon exclusive, this week's Patreon exclusive is going to be discussing a bizarre scenario that made me reconsider being an influencer and public persona. Nico, what do you mean? Just a slight dip into it. Basically, someone followed me. They slid into my DMs asking me very personal, heavy questions, and I didn't know how to properly respond. And then they started to spiral on social media and started adding me in it. And they posted a lot of self-harm stuff that you would not expect a stranger to be able to walk you through and or to bring up to someone you've never had a conversation with. And I've been met with weird energy before. I've been met with strange scenarios because I'm in the public eye, but that was the first time I've ever just been unsettled by something. So if that sounds interesting to you, because I'm going to go more into detail on Patreon where I can more freely talk about this kind of stuff, definitely check it out. Just be warned, there will be a trigger warning because it is very crazy. It actually made me sit down for a bit and go, should I even continue being a public persona? So yeah, sorry. Sorry to bring the mood down. But today, let's get to last video's comment. Last video's comment was actually from Noel Neeks. He commented and said, thank you for bringing this message out and, raising awareness for this topic. Because when I talk about accepting femininity, accepting femme-presenting people for who they are, I need to emphasize that is not me saying everyone has to date a feminine person. That is not me saying you have to find feminine people attractive. My main goal is saying somebody should not be ridiculed and persecuted for simply being feminine. Oh, well, they're putting on an act by wearing flamboyant clothing. If they like pastels, if they like flamboyant clothing, that is perfectly okay. That does not mean you have to date them. That does not mean you have to find them attractive. That means you should not berate somebody for doing what they want with their life. It does not concern you, so randomly attacking and harassing someone for existing next to a masculine person and or butch queen, because it's a dynamic, is ridiculous to me. And that's what my main PSA about all of this is. It's just let people exist. You don't have to date them. Just let people exist and stop attacking them for them being themselves. But now that we've gotten out of the way, let's get on to the actual story. Today we're going to be talking about Kanye West. Nico. So Kanye, he's had a lot going on in his life. I personally tuned out once he started to be very, very Yahtzee, but not with a Y. I have to word this very carefully because certain topics on YouTube I get demonetized. But essentially, everyone would continuously make excuses for Kanye because if you are black and or live in, I'd say North America, he's fairly popular across the globe, but he's very popular in rap culture. So if you grew up with rap culture, you grew up listening to Kanye. You know that he is a musical genius, or at least was when he had more time to actually make an album rather than making a half-complete album and just updating it until it's done. So he used to be very conscious. He used to be very educated on social issues, and he actively had conversations, let's say, about homophobia in the rap community or the inequality that black people go through in just social spaces, corporate America. He's very well-rounded, but he has acknowledged that he is bipolar. He has acknowledged that he does not actually take medication. He's not medicated, so he's going through consistent manic episodes. This is not me making excuses for him. Some of the things that he said along the years completely out of bounds and can't be defended. I'm just telling you what his scenario is. So he's recently been officially canceled because he opened up about his homoerotic experiences that he had as a child with his cousin. So if you did not know, once again, Kanye West has talked about homophobia in the rap community before, and he actually expressed that he himself had been ridiculed to the point that it made him slightly homophobic, because people would point out that he walked differently, that he talked differently, that he was soft, to the point that anything that was related to the LGBT community, he immediately pushed it away as a defense mechanism. And I got this information from the blog Gay Magazine on Instagram. I already saw the original tweet where he opened up about experimenting with his cousin in his youth, basically saying he found one of his father's Playboys, and from there he began to show his cousin, and they continued to experiment together until they were 14. In this interview, he's actually talking about his cousin, but now that he's said this, it adds a lot more context as to why he changed his ways and the way he views homosexuality.
In high school, be like, yo, you acting like you acting like, dawg, you gay? And I used to deal with that when I was in high school. And what happened is it made me kind of like homophobic, because it's like I would like go back and like question myself, like, damn, why does everybody else walk like this and I walk like this? Or why is then you start just looking, because you don't realize until you're in high school. People like, yo, fam, look at you. Look at how you act. If you see something and you don't want to be that because it's such a negative connotation towards it, you try to separate yourself from it so much that it made me homophobic. By the time I was through high school, like anybody that was gay, I was like, yo, get away from me. And really, like Tupac said, started hanging with the thugs, and you look up and all my friends were like really thugged out. And it's kind of like I was racing to try to find that constant masculine role model right there, to the point where it's like I would really discriminate. Like I use the word like always condescending towards gays and look down upon gays. And I remember my cousin told me that another one of my cousins was gay. And at that point, it's kind of when the turning point where I was like, yo, this is my cousin. I love him. Like, and I've been discriminating against gays. It's like, do I discriminate against my cousin? And then everything starts to click. You know, he brings his partner with him to like Thanksgiving and all that. And you just had to sit back and think, like, damn, you know, hip hop really is about everybody in hip hop discriminates against gay people. To me, like, that's one of the standards of hip hop, is to be like, yo, you gay. Matter of fact, the exact opposite word of hip hop, I think, is gay. Like, yo, you play a record and it's like whack, that's gay, dog. You know, if it's good, that's that hip hop right there. You see what I'm saying? It's like the exact opposite. So it's like me speaking for my entire culture, of me looking at my rappers out there, hip hoppers discriminate against gay people. I wanted to just come on TV and just tell my rappers, just tell my friends, like, yo, stop it, fam. Like seriously, that's really discrimination. To me, that's exactly what they used to do to black people. I'm just trying to tell people, just stop all that.
Essentially, he came out and said, I experimented for a long period in my youth because of my early access to adult cinematography. It awakened sexual urges in me, and I just did that until we were 14. And now people are finally coming around to officially cancel Kanye. It wasn't when he came online and said that slavery was a choice, and he said that because, oh, there was enough black people that you could just stand up and rise against. It's not a choice. It was a systematic thing. There's also the whole entire Yahtzee situation that people consistently make excuses for, saying, oh, well, when his mother passed away from, you know, cosmetic surgery, it changed him and he began to spiral, which can be true. He could have started mentally spiraling from there, but that does not excuse the things that he's saying. But what was interesting to me was the final straw was him being open about sexually experimenting and possibly being bisexual, seeing as how He does hang around industry people who are quote unquote bisexual. He's been spotted a lot with Diddy at Diddy's parties. That's not me saying anything about what happens at those parties or the lawsuits that those two are both in, because I'm not well versed enough in his cases at least. But it's interesting to see that the community is finally retracting support, not because of the inflammatory things that he's saying, but because he's saying homosexuality isn't bad. Because he is saying experimenting sexually is not bad. And I wish that a lot more people would understand that growing up during your adolescence, your hormones are going crazy. That's not me saying that, oh, you're all going to do gay things, but it's not as uncommon as you would think that children and or early teens in their youth experiment with one another. I mean, I'm not going to open up too much about this, but I've even been in those situations where I remember as a kid, when I would discover my body, I would begin to experiment as well. And I've even experimented with people I was close with at that time. I'm not going into detail about this. Point is, it's not unheard of to hear about people in their adolescence trying to figure out what actually works for them. So it's interesting to see that in a different world where Kanye wasn't necessarily demonized for these things in his youth, he could have possibly been an openly bisexual and or queer rapper, since he only distanced himself from those thoughts and actions when people actively would other him. Because I always tell people when we have these conversations about the homophobia in our community, and yes, it's global, I understand, but I'm speaking specifically from my communities and my experiences. I was called the F word before I was called the N word from my own people, if I'm being quite honest. So with that being said, I want to hear your opinions down below. How do you feel about Kanye not being held accountable for his inflammatory speech patterns, the negativity he puts out into the world? But once he says, I've experimented sexually, it is perfectly natural. I have no homophobic ill will towards gay people. Now the black community is saying Kanye's up. It's time for him to hang it up. He needs to retire. He's done. It's just so interesting to me that they could literally excuse Yahtzee, but someone saying being gay is natural. Oh, that is unbelievable. But with that being said, I'll leave the conversation up to y'all, and I will see you guys next time. Boop. And now for a brief yet sincere shout out to some of my day one subscribers, Sailor Mermaid IX and Trey S. Your continued support is greatly appreciated, and thank you once again to everyone who supports the channel. We've officially hit 44K girlies! And this week's live stream will unfortunately be cancelled, seeing as how it is summer and I am traveling for work and will be at Latino Oasis to cover the final party. I've heard about it, but I want to see it for myself before it comes to an end, so I will see you guys next time.